The events of the movie begin with the fact that in the distant 2047, the spaceship Lewis and Clark goes on a rescue mission. The crew has to find a missing ship that disappeared without a trace 7 years ago near the planet Neptune. The team consists of experienced astronauts as well as the mission's chief engineer, Dr. William, who designed it. Veer explains to the crew that the ship didn't just disappear, it used an experimental engine to create a wormhole allowing instantaneous travel of vast distances. But something went wrong on the first launch and the ship vanished. As Lewis and Clark approach the location where the skyline disappeared, the crew manages to locate it. The ship is hovering in Neptune's orbit, but at first glance appears abandoned. When the crew makes their way inside through the horizon, they discover that the entire interior of the ship looks dingy and desolate. There is debris, signs of destruction, and strange symbols everywhere, with blood spilled on the walls. The team splits up to explore different parts of the ship. Dr. Veer, despite his confidence in the safety of the project, looks tense. He is greatly concerned about what could have gone wrong with his brainchild. Captain Miller, commander of the Lewis and Clark mission, explores the engine room with the team, where they encounter a mysterious gravity-setting huge sphere that is the very engine for creating the wormholes. It slowly rotates and its surface reflects everything around it, creating a sense of infinity. Officer Stark begins to examine the ship's log entries, trying to figure out what happened to the crew. At this time, Peters, the medical officer, discovers a disturbing video recorded before the ship disappeared. It shows the crew of the Skyline behaving extremely strangely, and then scenes of horror begin as crew members attack each other. The video ends with a creepy shot where one of them rips his face open while shouting phrases in Latin. While the crew tries to figure out what happened, the ship's engineers, Cooper and Justin, begin conducting technical checks to assess the status of the Skyline. Justin notices that a strange gravity unit is activating on its own. When he gets too close, he is sucked inside the sphere. Cooper tries to pull him out, but fails, and Justin disappears into the black void. When he manages to retrieve him, he is in a coma and cannot speak. However, his body remains alive, although the doctors cannot explain what happened to him. The crew begins to panic. Miller realizes that through the horizon is hiding something terrible, and decides to abandon ship as soon as possible. However, they are soon faced with the impossibility of leaving. Lewis and Clark takes damage while trying to leave, and Captain Miller is forced to return to through the horizon and search for a way to survive. Meanwhile, the team members begin to experience terrifying hallucinations and visions that reflect their deepest fears and experiences. Dr. Veer begins to see his deceased wife Claire, who committed suicide many years ago. She appears to him in different parts of the ship, accusing him of abandoning her and being too involved in his work. These visions become more and more realistic, and Veer loses touch with reality as he tries to figure out what these visions are. Captain Miller is also experiencing his own nightmares. He dreams of scenes from the past, when he was forced to leave his comrade to burn alive on a ship during a previous mission. He hears his screams and sees his charred body in the fire, causing him great distress. Peters, in turn, faces hallucinations of her son, who lies in a wheelchair in front of her, accusing her of abandoning him. These visions are so real that she loses her guard and perishes in one of the ship's corridors. The situation becomes increasingly tense. Miller begins to suspect that the gravity unit on the Skyline has opened a portal to some other dimension, a dimension of pure terror and chaos. This dimension, in his opinion, has taken over the ship and is now affecting everyone on board. Meanwhile, Dr. Veer is sinking deeper and deeper into madness. He is convinced that through the horizon has opened the door to a new, higher understanding of the universe, and that they should stay here forever. Veer destroys the communication system and threatens the entire crew, determined to make sure they never leave the ship. The crew desperately tries to devise a rescue plan, but their chances are dwindling by the minute. Justin suddenly comes out of his coma and begins to talk about what he saw over the horizon, describing a place where there is no time, only pain and suffering. His description only heightens the team's fears. Miller realizes that they must destroy beyond the horizon to prevent this evil from spreading further. In the final part of the movie, the real struggle for survival begins. Veer finally goes mad and wreaks havoc on board, trying to kill the remaining crew members. Cooper finds himself thrown into space, but he manages with the help of improvised means to get back on board. Miller and Stark continue to fight for their lives. Veer, in an attempt to finalize his plan, activates a wormhole, wanting to send the entire ship and crew into a hellish dimension. The scene culminates when Miller, realizing that there is nothing more he can do, decides to sacrifice himself to save the others. He encounters Dr. Veer, who has now become the creepy embodiment of his obsession and madness. Veer, crippled and distorted by the power spilling out of the wormhole, taunts Miller, claiming that he will see all the horrors beyond space and time. However, Miller manages to blow up part of the ship, splitting the Through the Horizon into two parts. The gravity-driven part is sent into the wormhole, while the remaining part, containing Stark and Cooper, remains in place. The finale of the movie takes us forward a few days. Lewis and Clark are discovered by rescuers, and Stark and Cooper are the only survivors. Even so, Stark sees a vision of Dr. Veer emerging from the escape pod, which causes her to scream in fear. However, she soon realizes that it was just a dream or vision. The rescuers release her and the doors of the capsule close. The scene ends on a disturbing note, leaving the audience in doubt as to whether the nightmare is really over, or is the evil associated with Through the Horizon still haunting them. The movie creates a sense of tension and dread through an enclosed atmosphere where the protagonists face not only physical threats, but also their own demons.